Sold some dry cloths yesterday driving home.
You can get started with.
Okay. Alright, we're gonna call this May 11th Madison County Planning Commission meeting to order. We're gonna start out with a prayer.
Let's all pray. Dear Lord, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for all the blessings that we have and the beautiful springtime. Lord, we just realize that you are just renewing this earth, Lord, and we just thank you for all the things that happen in this beautiful springtime season. Lord, just lift us all up today. Lord, keep us safe. Keep all the people that protect us each and every day. Lord, we know that they put their lives on the line each and every day, Lord. We just thank you for that. We thank you for protecting them. Lord, as we continue on with our meeting today, we just pray that you will help us do the best for this county. Yes, we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, everybody stand for the pledge, please. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Stacy,
Yes, sir.
we have a roll call, please.
Jerry Alexander,
Present.
Lindsey Brown, Kim Hyatt. Here. Corey Bolander,
Here.
Tom Shepard,
Here.
John Richwine,
Here.
John Zimmerman,
Here.
David Kane,
Here.
and Wes Lincoln.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, April 13th minutes. Are there any additional corrections to those?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same? Motion passed. Okay, Brad. We'll go.
The first and only item on the agenda is regard to Drews Parks. There was a request at the last meeting to have Kelly Drews come to the Plan Commission and give an update and answer any questions that you may have, and he is here as of right now. If you'd like him to go ahead and come on up.
Good morning, Jason Miller, Randall Miller & Associates, 145 East 3rd Street in Marion. I'm here representing Mr. Drews. I'm a professional engineer, professional land surveyor, and a certified floodplain manager, and a certified professional in erosion and sediment control. Those are my state and national certifications and qualifications here to represent Mr. Drews this morning. I understand that last meeting we had requested a 90-day extension, which going back to the original schedule presented back in January, that was the same deadline that was identified for Mr. Drews, working with the prior professional engineer to get him to come into compliance. Our understanding is that a 60-day extension was granted, so we're very appreciative of that, which allows me to take over this project and obtain compliance from all the regulations, some of which I'll talk about here momentarily. But we're here to provide an update on our status, our involvement. I'm not aware of all the details that have been before me and my process. My involvement started approximately a month ago. Mr. Drews had retained me in very early April for essentially taking over this project. He explained that the prior engineer was retained to provide compliance with all of the violations and had been working under that assumption from January until late March or very early April. I'm not exactly sure of the specific timeline, but we'll say approximately 90 days, and had for a number of reasons failed to submit the required documentation for this board. I certainly understand the board's frustration. I would be as well if we were following up on everything and believing that we were making progress, and at the 11th hour, I'm sure you felt like the rug was pulled out from underneath you. I know that's the case of Mr. Drews as well. So I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm here to talk about what my role is in the future, how my engagement with Mr. Drews is going to move this project forward and ultimately come into compliance. So what have we done to date? We have been on the property of Mr. Drews working on the topographical survey to identify the current conditions of the property as it relates to topography and existing utilities, so that we can then begin the engineering design for compliance for both stormwater and other IDEM regulations. So we are currently working on the engineering design. We are working feverishly to accomplish everything that we need to submit to the appropriate agencies within that 60-day time frame. However, I will be very honest and frank with you, that is going to be very difficult within 60 days. Just please bear in mind that we were engaged, like I said, very early April, and I'm doing everything that I can with my team and my resources to show goodwill from my company in representing Mr. Drews. Again, I'm not here to answer questions about what was done previously. I wasn't involved in that. But to give you guys assurances that my firm is capable of producing the documents required. I'm very familiar with the ordinance locally, as well as all state, federal rules regarding the property and the project that's ongoing for quite some time. So I'm here on an opportunity to answer questions from the board, give you guys assurances of what my role in this project is, and answer any questions that anybody may have of me or Mr. Drews. Anything as far as the schedule that he might be able to answer, I would defer to him. As far as anything technical, that would be something that I would be more than happy to answer. So at this time, I'll ask of any questions of the board of me or Mr. Drews, and we'll do our best to give you the answers that hopefully you're looking for.
I had several questions. By the board.
Oh, Stacy, you might hope Lindsay's here.
Yes.
Yes.
Alright. So, Drew just hired you in April, you said?
Yes, sir.
We requested this information back, was it in February?
Yeah, it would have been early.
It,
It was early April? We're supposed to, and he's supposed to have something submitted by, to the drainage board by April the 5th, did they get done?
No, it's not. That was explained at the last meeting.
Okay.
You knew his other engineer quit right at the last minute.
Yeah. So, I do know that his other engineer did quit, and I live in that residence, so I'm just gonna be quite frank. What I see here now is a lot of what I feared. I do not, as I told before, I said I do not want to see a business get shut down, right? But what I see is, I'm starting to see a pattern of possibly it's gonna start occurring is, keep kicking the ball down the road. Keep kicking the ball down the road. We in the middle of the rainy season. I mean, I'm looking at right in front of my house. My neighborhood is probably 80% people that are 70 years old or above. And every time it rains, and it's a decent rain, they're trapped in their house. And it's all due to the work that he has done on his land. And it's not stopped.
mm-hmm.
And when I look at, and I'm not just thinking and saying that, because there is another part that floods down the street. No, this is direct water coming from Drew's Parks. And I got pictures to show of the flow of the water, where we can't even get our driveway. I'm lucky I have a truck that I can raise it up, and I have to pick my wife up around the corner. She can't even get in the house. It's getting old. I don't pay all that much money to live in a nice neighborhood, not to be able to go in and out of my house when I want to. So I pulled some records myself, right? And when I look at like the compliance from what you have put out, not one thing has been done. And I'm going off of the Department from IDEM report. And IDEM has basically said that nothing has been done. And that was as of, March the 4th. I mean, when is something gonna get done?
I mean, the simplest answer that I can provide you is, again, number one, my involvement started approximately 4 to 5 weeks ago. What I can tell you is Mr. Drews thought that something was being done under the old engineer, the prior engineer, and he was under the understanding that all those documents were going to be turned in. So in discussions with him and Mr. Newman, everybody involved thought that the documents were going to be submitted timely, and they were not. So when the prior engineer had quit, Mr. Drews had reached out to a couple of engineering firms looking for someone that would be able and capable of taking this project on. My understanding is there was a firm out of Indianapolis that did not have the capacity due to their existing workload. They had recommended some other engineers. I was one of them. Ultimately, I was hired. I believe it was a week before the prior Plan Commission meeting. And as of the date that I had requested an extension, which was April 12th, I had not yet even stepped foot on the property. So he had engaged us. We began the field survey work immediately and are now in the engineering phase to do what is required of the property owner and ultimately gain compliance. It does take time. That's one of the reasons why I believe under the old schedule, the former engineer was allotted for 90 days. My request was for 90 days. We were granted 60. I'm going to do what I can in that 60 days. I certainly understand your frustration living in the area. I don't want anyone to be damaged by anything that is either alleged to go on or is actually going on this subject property. I'm not an attorney. I can't speak to any damages that would have been caused as a direct result of any operations on the property. My role is to simply allow for engineering compliance and zoning compliance to eliminate any further violations. So I've been talking to Mr. Drews, explaining here's what needs to happen in order to take these steps to show compliance, and we're taking those steps. But it is going to take time, and it will not happen overnight. And any damages that are caused, that's going to be something that has to be worked out either privately through the civil matter or in court. And I understand there is pending litigation, and that's something that, it's not going to go away until both parties are satisfied.
So, why did the first engineers quit?
I'm sorry?
Do you know why the first engineers are getting Drew? Can you speak to that?
I have no idea. The way it sounded, he didn't have the capacity because IDEM wanted me to do a Rule 6, which I didn't know what Rule 6 was at the time, but it's pretty extensive on other stuff. And he was, Mr. Serves was like, I can't do it. And it was like the day before the deadline. It was like, are you kidding me? And Brad's
Sure.
talking.
Yeah, no problem.
I just want to address a couple of the questions there. With regard to the flooding in Sires Golden Acres, that flooding has been there for decades.
No, hold on. Let me correct that.
It's been there for
Hold on, let
decades.
me correct that. There was a stream that came through, right?
Yeah.
And when I say a stream, it probably, literally, you could actually, it wouldn't even come up to the top of your shoe, right? It was a very small stream. And then when he started doing the excavating in that area, that street flooded to where it goes up to my waist. So no, there was a stream. In fact, I know, because I've been there for 11 years.
Well, I worked in the surveyor's office from 1988 to 1999, and there were several flooding issues throughout those 11 years. We hired an engineer back in 96
Right.
to design fixing or correcting that problem. So there has been flooding issues out there for
No.
decades.
There has been, but so there's two parts that flood, right? So you have flood that comes right there off of MacArthur when you turn off of 109. And that is a major flood, and that goes up to the people's doors, but it does not come to my street. So I'm at the Y of MacArthur, where you curve off and then go to Flintwood. Now this path, and here's the pictures to show you. This path of water flows straight from Drews Park property all the way down to in front of my house. Now, it was a small stream, and you can see where the irrigation, where the erosion has been occurring ever since he has started, the excavating in that land. And now, where you had sewer hose that you basically couldn't see, now the water is washed where they're visible to the naked eye. So to say that, that it flooded, yeah, it did flood, but it didn't flood at this capacity. Where we have gallons, where the water comes up to my light pole, and the water never came up to my light
In that
pole.
particular location.
Coming
Yeah.
from Drew's Park.
Yeah, because before that, it did get high enough, people could not get out of the subdivision in the other location.
Put it like this, when
Yeah.
I first moved there, I had a Cadillac STS. And when it flooded, I could drive through there with my Cadillac.
Yeah.
Now I have a Jeep. And I have to put the button to raise my Jeep up to get through the water. My wife has a Durango. She cannot get through the water. So it's a huge night and day difference.
That's in a second location.
This is in the exact same location I'm talking about since Drew's Parks did his excavation where the water increased tremendously.
There's no doubt that he created some issues when he did excavating out there, absolutely no doubt. But as far as deep flooding in MacArthur Court in that area, it's been there for decades.
So I cannot say deep flooding has not. I can say flooding, yeah, the street got wet and water flowed. But as far as deep flooding, no, it did not. And I've been here for 11 years. So it's a huge difference. And you can see the flow of the water.
One thing has been done, I noticed that there's been a lot of equipment moved out of there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's been a big change. I mean, you can't say there hasn't been anything done. There's quite a bit, and that was part of the problem that we're having is, of course, the outside storage, and that's a lot that's being done, so.
And some erosion control measures have been installed along the east property line. There's been
Where
some.
the water comes out onto the street there.
Yes, sir. Yep, into the roadside swale, the ditch. So there is some straw bales there. We're gonna talk, Mr. Drews and I are gonna talk about maintenance and appropriateness of various erosion control measures. That's a step towards compliance of Rule 6, which is dealing with industrial stormwater construction and discharge. So, again, this stuff is ongoing. I can only speak of my involvement, like I said, for the past 4 to 5 weeks. And, I'll be glad to answer whatever questions you guys have. And ultimately, the decision is yours on whether or not Mr. Drews is doing enough to satisfy this board on compliance. If it's not, then you have the right to do what you feel is best. And my job here is to, simply say that, he's hired me to get him into compliance, and I'm doing that. It's not like I can magically remove everything from the property and put grass and get it to grow. That can't happen. But we're doing what we can to eliminate any
this part
issues.
that Lindsay's talking about, and he's correct. The amount of water that's flowing down through there now, since the excavation of the pond, and the clearing of all the trees out there, now you're just talking bare dirt, no grass. It's increased exponentially.
Oh, absolutely.
And where it runs downhill, and then if you look at his first picture here, you're going to see 2 telephone poles. Now those telephone poles, there used to be just grass that ran down to the middle of the nice little swale, and that was the water that ran down through there. Probably the same amount of water, it's just coming 10 times as fast.
Sure.
But that's eroded away up to almost the bottom of those telephone poles, just to give you an idea of how much that's changed. So if you look at that, that was a nice slope, it was grass before. Now there's lots of erosion and no grass.
Sure, and that's very common with any type of construction activity, whether or not it's for this large of a scenario or if it's a 1-acre site. So, yeah, there's absolutely been an increase. My role is to determine what was there prior to any construction activity and ultimately remove that additional increase in discharge to what was there prior, and ultimately satisfy the ordinance. And that's what the engineering is doing right now. We're not there yet. We're headed in that direction. And I'm doing everything I can to have it completed in the next 30 days per the 60-day timeline.
And you are aware there was no pond permit granted?
Correct. Correct. Yeah, so what my role is from an engineering perspective for compliance with the ordinance is before Mr. Drews did anything on that property, anything, determine what that stormwater runoff was at that time and put together an engineering plan that would modify what's there today and eliminate any increase in runoff from what was there before he did anything on that property. That's what your ordinance requires. That's what we're going to provide. And ultimately, whether or not he's in compliance is going to be something that we have to show long term, both to this board, the drainage board, IDEM. Time will tell.
So what short-term remediation has occurred already?
Well, as one of the members mentioned, some of the equipment has been removed off-site. Mr. Drews is in the process of removing additional equipment off the property. We're looking from an engineering perspective what improvements can be made to eliminate any additional erosion and sedimentation from the subject property off-site. There's been straw bales, straw inlet protection placed on the east side where the ditch leaves Mr. Drews' property and continues east into the residential area. Those were installed. Beyond that, I'm not sure that I know of, off the top of my head, of any additional immediate actions that were taken. I know that we've got a list of several dozen items that are required with a specific timeline that we're working towards making those happen.
How far out does that timeline run you?
Let me verify that. I know long term, I believe it's January of 23, but that's full restoration of everything. The former deadline back from a January start date was July 29th, 21. All construction completed and temporary safety measures are uninstalled or removed. I don't know that a new specific deadline was established based upon my involvement. I know that I have 60 days from your last meeting to submit our documentation to show compliance. So that would be the documents to the Plan Commission and the Drainage Board for here's what our design includes to show that we are complying with the ordinance. There would be a review and approval, and then he would then begin construction on those items. And I don't know from my files if a deadline's been established on that. I can't comment.
So how will you actually measure success, rather than simply being in compliance?
Mm-hmm.
How will you measure success?
So a couple of different things. Number one, we would have no increase in stormwater discharge from the property. So if, I'm going to make up some fictitious numbers, if 5 gallons of water was leaving the site 5 years ago before any activity started, then our goal after construction's completed that less than 5 gallons leaves the property. That's part of the stormwater drainage ordinance for the county.
You'll be measuring that?
I will be, yes, sir. And along with your reviewing agency for the Plan Commission and the Drainage Board. That's also one thing that IDEM will be measuring. Ultimately, my success is going to be determined on whether or not all permits are issued, construction solves the problem, and the file is ultimately closed by all reviewing agencies, local and state and federal. In a perfect world, I would love for all the neighbors downstream, such as yourself and others, to ultimately be happy and come back to a meeting in the future and say, RMA did what they said they were going to do for Mr. Drews, and while we don't like that we had to take the process that we did, he did exactly what he said he was going to do. That's ultimately my goal. When it water rains, or when it rains and the water's collected on the property, it shouldn't be brown when it leaves the site. It should be clean. That's what the intent of Rule 6 is. Rule 6 is for industrial stormwater discharge. If this was not an industrial activity, we would fall under Rule 5. Rule 5 is for non-industrial construction activity. It's your common residential and commercial development in Indiana. That's one of my areas of expertise, and that's one of the reasons why I took this job, is because I know I can get it done. 60 days is very tight, but I'm going to do everything I can. That's why I'm here today, to show you that he's hired me, and we're going to give you what you've asked for as fast as we can give it to you. Yes, sir.
So what prompted the IDM demand order? Was there any kind of, other than the water discharge, was it any kind of chemicals, any kind of solvents or anything that's been discovered on the site?
Yes, so that was prior to my involvement, but in reading several files, several documents, it's my understanding that there was a spill that prompted I believe a neighbor to contact IDEM for a complaint for them for a spill. At that point, IDEM would get involved and direct immediate action to prevent contamination for downstream water bodies, or specifically any neighboring drinking water wells or any other land or water jurisdiction that IDEM would have.
So was this spill during Mr. Drew's ownership, or was it a prior spill that had?
I cannot comment on that. I do not know that answer.
It was during his ownership. There was a hydraulic spill, as well as there's consistent oil sheen that sits on top of the water that comes from that property, even currently to today. It's still, you can tell when because oil raises and sits on top of the water.
Right.
And there's a consistent oil sheen, because actually, after the rain, it takes like 2 or 3 days, and right in front of my house, water just sits, and you can see the oil that sits on top of the water. And you can tell the difference between street level water oil from the streets, but this is a little thicker than street oil coming from cars. So it's a constant, consistent flow, because you're washing his land into our neighborhood.
Correct.
And if you look at the water, it's a coffee brown color, and it sits, because the water, if you look at the actual water flow, it will go from his land all the way down, and somebody has digged a trench to where water is flowing further down Flintwood and going straight across the street to Flintwood, and that's actually and that water kind of dumps into either Killbuck Creek or dumps into my lake that sits behind my house, and which is contaminating the lake that we live in, which is a no-wake lake. So it's got to the point where this is kind of, it's way past ridiculous, right?
Sure.
Because you have kids in the neighborhood. There's only there's 3 families that have kids, and they swim in that water. And then the rest of us, I don't fish, but my brother and they come over and fish in that water. So.
And they're all connected. I mean, every stream in Indiana is ultimately connected,
and this is a no-wake lake, so nothing runs in it. It just runs out, right?
Right.
So if it overflows, it flows out to Killbuck Creek. So nothing contaminating should be going in it, but it's starting to get it from the situation that occurred at Drew's Park.
Sure. And that goes back to your question, sir, on how do I measure success. Part of it, expanding on the Rule 6 compliance, touching on what he just said, is in Indiana, you are not only required to treat stormwater quantity, but you're required to treat stormwater quality. So we are going to be removing contaminants either from industrial activity or normal construction, suspended solids, iron, potassium, nitrogen. All of those items are contaminants which get into a stream like you're referring to and degrade the stream quality. So that is one measurement for success that is placed on industrial activity through Rule 6. There is a sampling requirement that doesn't take a visual observance. That water is coffee brown, as you said, and it takes it out of that subjective measurement to an objective measurement with specific metrics. We have to meet that. That is a requirement of IDEM and the state for Rule 6 compliance.
Have you done any current water testing?
I have not, no.
So do you have insurance liability insurance that covers this spill if it took place under your control of property?
I would assume so. I mean, I've got liability and I've got everything on the company. So.
Well, what I'm getting at is typically when you have an IDEM order and it deals with solvent type of issues that in the state of Indiana, the insurance companies are required to participate. They have no choice. You know, that's not true in other states, but in Indiana, it is a mandatory requirement. Insurance has a very limited way out of being required to be engaged in the cleanup. So I would suggest that you contact your insurance carrier and, you know,
Make sure.
they're not gonna automatically own it, but typically, if you get the right law firm, off the record, I can suggest somebody, but I think that would be a good approach to take. Because if you do have to do all of this, it's not gonna be cheap. It's gonna be very expensive and almost cost prohibitive to meet all of those requirements that IDEM is placing on you as a property owner. And it becomes, creates a lot of sleepless nights. I'm speaking from experience.
And unfortunately, we're already in that scenario. I mean, Mr. Drews is operating what's considered an auto salvage yard. It's an industrial activity. You can't go back. The only way to go back is to cease all operations, remove everything from the site, and restore it back to where it was initially. Now, there's a process to even do that. And we're in the middle of everything right now. You know, again, we're working towards compliance. Eventually, we will be there. It will either be compliance with ongoing operations for zoning, drainage, stormwater quality, Rule 6, stormwater discharge, or it will be remove everything, plant grass, and make it a nice privately owned piece of property with all grass. That's not what Mr. Drews is desirous of. Now, again, there's hoops to jump through whichever way we go. Right now, we're going down the route that is most desirous to him, but there are requirements that he has to meet. A lot of that comes with a financial burden. That's something that he has to decide from a financial decision, and I'm simply one tool in his toolbox for compliance. And my role isn't to work directly for him, but to represent all laws and ordinances governing my profession, your local rules, the state rules, the federal rules, and his desires. My job is to merge all of that together.
So from IDEM's perspective, are they at least satisfied with your responses and intention? Have you gotten any communication from IDEM that says, okay, you know, we're good with the progress that's being made, or are they requiring anything that is like impossible to accomplish within the timeframes that they've set? Have you been in compliance with what IDEM is requiring?
I can't answer whether or not we're in compliance. I personally, my company has not made any submittal to IDEM. We are in communications with IDEM. I know the stormwater inspector for this area personally. He's been involved in several projects that I've been involved in. But beyond that, I've not made any formal submittal to IDEM, but there will be submittals made in the future to document that compliance with all IDEM regulations.
And then yesterday, I'm proactive calling IDEM, because if there's some kind of violation, like one of them was on the east side of our property, we put a gate on there because from where we bought the church, that's where our offices are. I didn't know you couldn't go back and forth across. So Brad's like, hey, you can't do that. Okay, close the gate, put a lock on it, done. On the IDEM stuff, if there's a violation or whatever, it's taken care of. I emailed with the Lori, Freeman, Feldman, whatever. I was like, I want you back out here because the violation we have is gone. All tires and stuff are in a building. Because since then, I put money down 2.5, maybe 3 years ago now on the military museum when all this stuff's going with the military museum, because that would be our inside storage to put all of our stuff outside, inside. And a lot of stuff, you know, on excavators and wheel loaders and stuff for us. And it doesn't do me no good when I have $1,000 part here and there that I can't put in a building because we don't have enough buildings. And when I put that money down 3 years ago, I was like, let's get this done. Let's get everything inside. And in the meantime, my attorney got a hold of Jonathan Cook, and he's like, Jonathan, we need to get something done on this. It's just, I don't even know why it's dragging on so long. I put money down, we've come up with a purchase price, we've agreed on it, we've signed it, it's all done, I got the money to pay for it, I just want it done. So in the meantime, a month ago, or probably just 2-3 weeks ago, my attorney Ralph Sipes got a hold of Jonathan, said, let's at least get a lease done. Let's do something so we can start moving this stuff inside. Let's start, and we finally got that done. So the lease is signed, all the tires that were in violation, which I'm trying to get IDEM out there this week, so when we go to court next week, they don't have anything on me that says, you're in violation. No, it's gonna be cleared up. All tires are inside, done. Violation, take care. If there's a violation, I try and take care of it right then. I don't like waiting a week or 2 weeks. I want it done.
I got a question.
Yep.
You mentioned 2 properties. The church you bought on School Street, did you ever get that rezoned?
Really?
For office? I mean, you just said
It
it,
has not been rezoned yet.
so that's a
Aren't you
violation.
part of the board? I mean,
Hold on, I'm
you
just
know
asking.
what, you know what
Kelly,
was a
can you make
rezone.
sure that you're stepping up to the board, to the podium to speak, please? Thank you.
We had him pull the petition because it wasn't not going to work in the zoning classification that I had him go through. So I'm working on that. That's my holdup on getting that taken care of. I've been working on other things and have not determined what's going to be the best zoning classification for that as of yet.
Okay.
And he'll still have to go in front of the planning commission to get approval for that. And planning commission can certainly deny that. If they choose to offer a favorable recommendation, then the Board of Commissioners would have the final say on that.
All right.
So Brett, is there one other issue that before us relative to this property? There's that pending application which was withdrawn. Was there another issue?
Well, the other issue is getting in front of the Drainage Board with the plan that Mr. Miller is working on.
Okay, there wasn't one other topic that a zoning issue?
Well, the other zoning issue is the fact that he is zoned light industrial, and that a salvage yard or a junkyard is not permitted in light industrial. And that's what he's working towards, getting into compliance so that the type of business he has is a permitted use within that particular zoning.
So is that a pending application that we
That-
acted on yet?
That is not a pending application. That's what one of the major violations is, and one of the reasons he's working on getting all that machinery out or enclosed.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned about taking all the equipment out, because that's gonna help solve that problem.
It's a use violation.
Yep.
And we're trying to modify
And
that.
what IDEM's told me, that should alleviate the Rule 6, where I might know. So on that, when I talked to IDEM about well, I know what the Rule 5 is, that's pretty easy. Rule 6, didn't know how much there was. So on the Rule 6, Andrew Gamble, who's the IDEM guy, he's the one that's come out a couple times, and he's like, if you get all this cleaned up, which we're gonna do, and then you can always, you got a year to cancel the Rule 6, and he would come out and say, we're good, you don't need the Rule 6, and we can cancel it, is what he told me. And that's what I asked a couple other people, I said, is this, don't just take one person's word for it.
So then you go back to Rule 5 then?
Then I'd be Rule 5.
Right, that's what I
yeah.
thought.
So the plan is to get rid of the Rule 6.
Right.
If we have to do it, we have to do it, but, once all the machinery's gone and scrap prices are out the roof right now, and we've been waiting on this anyways. So, and we've been taking stuff out on I wish I could say daily basis, but I know average of every other day, because I know, probably more than that, because we have 2 different companies hauling out, and last 2 months, we've had like 13 to 16 loads per company taking stuff out, so.
You had mentioned the military museum as the place for ultimate storage that you've actually engaged a lease.
Indoor storage.
And my understanding is that that's been sold in a tax sale, and there's litigation in that issue, and if the purchasers in the tax sale prevails in that, will they be as agreeable to allow you to continue to keep storage there?
As from what I was under the understanding, we had an agreement, and we were the one that purchased it.
So were you the entity that purchased it in the tax sale, or was another entity involved?
Like a few years ago.
Yeah, this was like
2017.
So what I remember that, so some company bought it, and then I was gonna go through them and buy it from them because I wanted it. And then it all went through the courts or all this stuff. But when it went through the courts, he said that he's out. He was cutting his losses and it was over. From what I know.
I think
There's more than that.
I can update the commission on
Okay.
that. Horrible case.
Update me.
Okay. In 2017, the property did sell at tax sale. And there was immediately a controversy about the validity of the sale itself. And believe it or not, that hearing is because of it. There was an argument by the current owner whether the property should have been eligible for the tax sale at that time based on an appeal of an assessment change. Had to do with charitable purpose and things like that. It was in front of the Board of Commissioners back in 2017 to try to get it removed from the tax sale. I think even prior to that. Finally went through the tax sale 2017. There was a suit to invalidate the sale. There is a hearing on that particular issue this June of 2021 on the 17 tax sale. If yeah, I know it's lawyers, but if the tax sale is if the sale that happened at the tax sale in 2017 is upheld, there will be a certificate issued to the entity that bought the property. Doesn't mean it's going to transfer right off the top. So there's a lot of twists and turns still with that case, but there's a big hearing coming up in June. John Cook's involved with the current owner of McLean. There's the attorney for the tax sale purchaser, and then there's the county who's taken a position that the tax sale was indeed valid back in 2017. So I'll keep you updated on that exciting case.
Quick question then, goes along with that. So you have not met with the drainage board at all, right?
No.
Now, I remember there was a discussion about traveling between the properties and making a pathway through there.
Yep.
And that it was prohibited.
Okay.
You still did it. Between both properties, between your property, your current property, and
No.
which is, and then I'm saying, and this is the reason why I'm saying this is because.
Have we done it? Yes. But when Brad told me you can't do that, gate was locked, there's a lock on it, it's never been used again.
But it's still been used.
No, it's not. I don't even know where the key is. That's a lie. It's a lie.
Sure?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Once Brad told me that, and he didn't even want to bring it up because it was like, this is minor little stuff, but you need to quit this, okay? Put a lock on it.
How long ago was it he told you not to quit? Told you to quit?
I'd have to go through the files to find the exact date.
At least some months ago?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if I can tell you that I got pictures of fresh tracks showing from one property to another?
You're wrong.
It's just somebody that did it?
Yeah, don't tell you.
Are you gonna submit that as evidence?
Yeah.
Lindsay?
Yeah.
We got a lot.
Take a walk off.
Yeah, if we have to, we can put the fence back up and get ready to get all together, even though it's locked with the chain lock. It's never been taken off.
Which properties are you talking about?
Coming from Drew's Park to, going across to the,
Church.
not the church, I'm talking about going across to
McLean.
McLean, the museum.
If you're gonna speak, you're gonna.
I'm sorry, to the
name
museum.
address.
Going across to the museum.
Going across to
To the west.
Mm-hmm. Traveling west.
And what about,
So you crossing that drainage right there, and
okay?
you dig a trench through there.
No, we
I
didn't.
mean, not a trench, but a path,
Okay, correct.
and you cut a path through there,
Yes.
which is increasing, of course, the flow of water because you're disturbing the ground again, and you wasn't supposed to disturb the ground. as you got it, until you got everything else fixed, and continually to keep doing things.
You know, my understanding, the issue was not the museum, a path
From the museum to there.
The museum, but the issue was
The path was already there. We did take some,
wasn't the issue, the church property on School Street?
Correct.
And that was the issue that Brad said?
Yes.
Not allowed. It had nothing, so Lindsay's bringing up a point that is totally unrelated to what.
and that's
the
what I'm
conversation
getting
was.
an understanding of now.
This path doesn't have anything, you haven't been told that you could not drive from your site to the museum.
Correct, we actually got McLean's okay to do that.
Okay, well,
And-
it's not an issue, Lindsay.
It's an unregulated drain, because if you make that path through there.
Well, he hasn't been cited for that.
Right, but I'm bringing it up that he's doing it though.
That he couldn't travel between those two properties.
So you're talking about two different properties?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that, yeah. I thought he was talking about the one to the church. But that path was already there, going through the woods. We cleaned some brush out, and that was it. We haven't cut anything down, trees wise. One tree fell, I did cut it in half, but you can tell where it was rotted out. Still laying there.
When will the drainage board get involved in this, or with the water coming out of that? Is there any, will the drainage board be involved in moving the water out of that pond? One of these huge rains we just saw the pictures of. How are we gonna, okay, you say you're gonna clean the water up, that's great and fine, but still the water's gonna move, it's gonna go. So how's it gonna go? I'm assuming it's gonna go to the creek eventually?
Well, ultimately, yeah, so
Okay, how are you gonna do that without flooding the street on the way?
that's part of the engineering design that we're currently working on. So imagine a wall along all of the property corners, property lines of Mr. Drew's property.
Okay.
Wherever water leaves that site, it cannot be any greater than it was before he did anything on this property. It cannot be any greater. So
How are
whatever,
you gonna do that?
multiple different options, one of them would be a pond on site. So the detention basin, just like you normally would for any other development, same concept. So
And then it goes out slowly?
it would go out at a slower rate, yes, sir. Not only rate, but also quality.
Right. Well, I understand the quality part, I'm just trying to figure out the rate, because you get these huge rains, that water's gonna, that pond's full anyway.
The
that water's
county,
gonna
the
come
county
out.
ordinances are more restrictive even than the city ordinance.
Yeah, that's true.
So when they get done, if they follow the county ordinance, there'll be less water running
Yes.
off that property than there's ever been.
Correct. And that's part of what we're doing right now. I have not been before the drainage board. We're not in a position now to present anything, but I can tell you that we've got a bunch of talking points that we're going to be meeting with IDEM, the drainage board, multiple boards, to make sure that there's not something that is a pending issue, like something that you just brought up of going to the museum. I want to know. If I don't know about it, I can't solve that problem. So we're going to try to determine from all governing agencies with any jurisdiction at all, what concerns do you have with the property or the use that's on the property, and how can I, as an engineer, remedy that issue? If it's a legal issue, that's not for me. I'm not an attorney. I can't argue that. So beyond that, if it's a technical issue as it relates to engineering or surveying or erosion or flooding, that's my expertise.
So are you gonna be doing the implementation of the engineering?
I guess I would ask for your definition of implementation. I'm doing the design. I will put together a plan, and then Mr. Drews will be responsible for the construction, and I have an obligation to ensure that the construction is compliant with my design, and if it's not, I'll issue a letter that says that this is what you're doing wrong, here's how you need to correct it. So I don't know if that met your definition of implementation. Okay.
So who, Mr. Drew, who will be doing the construction,
Construction of what?
the implementation of this plan?
Any ponds or any other activities that we need to go on?
To be determined. As soon as he gets that done, I'm in the process of trying to find people and ask people around here, hey, who does this, who does that? Who's reputable, who can do it right, who can actually show up to do it. So that's part of the problem right now.
Do you have any contractors that you would, that will work with your company? for
Absolutely.
engineering designs?
Absolutely. And I don't do work significantly with local Madison County contractors, but there are obviously some that are capable. We would recommend that he talk to them. I have other contractors in surrounding areas that I work with on a regular basis that would absolutely have an interest in this. But ultimately, it comes down to who can do what I tell them to do. I'm responsible for what they do, not how they do it. They have to determine how they do what I tell them to do. And what I tell them to do will be on a plan that's documented, that is measurable, and that I can come in and say, yes, they did what I told them to do. Ultimately, how they do it is up to them.
So, let's go. I'm done.
Mr. Cruz, did I understand you correctly when you said market conditions are in your favor for removing a lot of the stuff now?
100%.
So do you have, and do we know, is there, what's the point where you come into compliance with not being improperly zoned? How much do you have to move?
By 2023, he wants it all under roof.
Yeah, it's all, there's no outside storage.
And in his proposal, there was gonna be a 300-foot lean-to, like a three-sided, so under roof, where we'd start to put machines. And in the process, I wanted to move it from the east side to the north side, which we've already got a fence up. And then that's, if you guys know the area, there was that huge building there. There was a building that went on, probably 600 feet. Well, that's still all concrete. So I was gonna build the sides on that, then that was gonna be my outsourced storage. And can that still happen? Yes, but right now, since we got the museum and we've got a lease there and we're moving everything over there, the entire brown building, which is 300 and some feet long, is now cleaned out. So now that will become our inside storage for what machines are out there. Is there more machines on the property that can go in there right now? Absolutely. But we're working feverishly to scrap all that out. I mean, if it goes up again in June, like people are saying, I might have to stop pulling stuff that we got sold and just start, because the plan is to pull all the good parts off, put them inside, get rid of the rest. That's what the plan is.
Well, I know from a prior conversation, there was a question about the practicality of putting all that stuff under roof. I'm just a visual observation. That's gonna be a big building. And so to the question about how quickly are you gonna be able to move all this stuff off property, other than what you decide to.
Are in under roof. I mean, without the museum, I say it'd be pretty tough to do. Is it doable? I mean, there's other ways around it, as in having to go rent inside storage somewhere else and have all the parts taken off and then go put them in another warehouse, go haul them off somewhere, which that would be terrible. I mean, just time-wise and money-wise and everything else.
But the nature of your business is to cannibalize all this equipment and then get rid of the scrap. Is that right?
Yes. We pull the engines and transmissions and final drives off. And like, we have a rebuild center for engines. We have a rebuild center for transmissions. We send them, let's say all over the country, but into Canada, different parts of the world too. But I mean, so we take all the good stuff, and if it's good enough to sell, and they want used, go for it. If not, we will rebuild them, have 6-month warranties on them. I mean, instead of going to the cat dealer, the case dealer, the deer dealer, our biggest customers are case dealers and cat dealers and deer dealers. We sell them the engines, they go sell it to their customer, put it in your machine or whoever's machine has an excavator or wheel loader, and you just don't pay the $50,000 for a $30,000 machine. It just don't make sense. You gotta find a cheaper avenue around it.
There's your prior deadline if you wanted to.
There is also one more step with compliance. Remember, when he purchased the property in 2012, there was a set amount of space that was being utilized as the business. He has expanded that. he has to bring it back to only the space that he had in 2012. And if there's ever a time he wishes to expand, he would need to get a special use from the Board of Zoning Appeals. So this is also establishing the site in which his business operates. And again, it must go back to the 2012 at the time he purchased the property. Well, that was one of the issues, and that caused a lot of the drainage issues, is that he expanded without coming in front of any board. A lot of trees and brush was removed, which created a lot of these drainage problems. We have to get him back to where he was in 2012.
And that goes to your original?
Yes, that's part of it, absolutely.
And the stuff, the machines that are up in the, let's say, the woods up on the hill, they have now, since since all this stuff has started, nothing else has gone up there, but stuff's definitely coming out. So.
Are you gonna increase the vegetation back from where it would?
Oh, yeah. Once it's done, Lindsay, it's gonna be immaculate.
Okay.
I mean, now that we can't have stuff in the woods, if I can or whatever, I would love to build a bigger pond and have it looking good. And there's bald eagles that fly in there, and I love having them in there. Not from a legal point though, but that'd be but they're cool to watch. They fly in. They have a 2-acre pond sitting there where they can come down and get fish out. That'd be pretty badass, I think. That'd be cool to watch. So, and I mean, my guys love to fish. My kids fish. I'm not much of a fisherman, just like you, like your brother does. I don't fish. But if I can make it better for everyone else and make a 2-acre pond and have it looking awesome out there, so be it.
So you're asking us to extend the timeframe, and the question I had, how long of an extension are you actually thinking in terms of, from your perspective, to at least get a plan together that can be implemented?
So let me clarify your question or your statement. Is last meeting I requested an extension of 90 days. You granted 60. Today I'm not necessarily asking for anything. Today is me coming before the board, providing you an update on where we are and where we're headed. If you're willing to give 30 days, I definitely would take it. At this point in time, I'm not asking for anything. I'm going to do what you've asked of us, and that is to comply within 60 days for a submittal.
But you said that was not a possibility to...
It is not practical. It is a possibility, but it's not practical. I was simply asking for 90 because I had been engaged within about a week prior to my letter of April 12th to the board asking for approval, an extension of 90 days. On the 13th of April, the board met and granted 60 days. So today I'm simply providing an update. Yes, it is going to be very difficult to get everything done and to have everything happen because of filing dates and meeting dates within a 60-day time frame. But that's what you've asked for, and I'm going to do everything I can to make that happen. I think at this point, rather than ask for one more extension, I think my opinion would be for Mr. Drews and I to show good faith and say, don't give me an extension. Let me come back to the next meeting and tell you what I've done additionally from today. And then if you desire, or if we need an extension at that point in time, for you to consider it. You can always say no. I'm not asking for an extension today, because then that shows bad intent from us. I don't want an extension right now. I asked for it back then. I didn't get it. So my opinion, I don't want an extension today. Let me show you what we're capable of doing. Let me show you what my name, my reputation, my company can do for compliance. And if I can't do it, then I'll tell you, it just wasn't enough time. There's so much to do here. There's so much involved. Here's what I've done, and let me prove to you that we made a significant attempt to comply with the 60-day time frame. You have that right then to say, no, you're in violation and we're not going to listen to you anymore. But let me show you what we're capable of doing.
I think that the results of this legal thing over in the tax sale on the museum is going to be an issue, because the county has pretty solid case on a buyer. Now, if you've worked out an arrangement with the potential buyer, that's another story.
Well, that was back in, when the fat tax sale went down, I got a hold of him, which I'm sure I could find the emails. But, yeah, we had a agreement and all that with because he was actually up around the Maryville area. That's where he was from, if I remember right. And, yeah, I mean, we had it drawn up, had a number, and I think it's pretty much the same number we have on it, what it is now, honestly, because he didn't pay much. He paid a couple, $2,000-3,000 for it, and he had all the paperwork done right then. I mean, it was all done immediately, and he did it all right, and everything was done by the book. And we were going to buy it from him, but that's when he came to me. He's like, this is a cluster. I'm out.
Well, which it supports the county's position if he gave notice and he's beyond the 120-day compliance part of it.
Go back on the sale.
You know, it's hard for if it was an SRI sale and it was legitimate, and according to the tax records, it's stating that the PETA board turned down his appeal for not-for-profit status, and that actually happened, and there was no appeal to the state beyond that. So, you know, it's kind of hard for them to argue that it's illegitimate. So,
And if if the buyer doesn't want it, then it'll go back on the tax sale, won't it?
yeah, but if the buyer's paying attorneys to pursue it June 10th, it sounds to me like he wants it, so.
I misspoke. It's July the 8th.
July the 8th,
Yeah,
okay.
just check.
So basically, yeah, I think he's
And
intended.
the guy is out of Maryville, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so it's the same guy, okay.
So he does want it though.
They're willing to transfer their interest for the right price.
Yeah, say,
Yeah.
he just doesn't want it to be sold for $3,000.
Correct. And we've already agreed to a much higher price than $3,000. So even if he burns 10 or 20,000 on it, he's still gonna be way
You hope
ahead.
you're the buyer no matter who ends up.
Absolutely. If I'm not the buyer, then, yeah.
Well, and let me add this point to the discussion is, to a certain extent, it's somewhat irrelevant of whether or not he gets title to that property or not. I mean, ultimately, we have a violation on property that he currently owns. Where he puts the equipment is somewhat irrelevant. It would be beneficial for him if he were to gain title to the museum property. If it does not, then it becomes somewhat of a detriment, but we still have a violation before this board that we have to comply with. Whether or not that's him remove everything and business close, that would be a nuclear option, but that's still what is required by this board for zoning compliance, from the drainage board for stormwater management, from IDEM for numerous items. You know, would it be nice for him to gain that property? Yes, that would help him achieve his next step, but ultimately we got to come in compliance with this order.
Regardless.
How many current employees do you have?
16,
All full-time?
all full-time. And I've got 1, 2, 2 or 3 neighbors that are part-time, that are, one's, he lives right behind the church. He's a Vietnam vet, Dan something, but he's literally right behind the house. And he worked at MoFab for 30 years, and now he wanted some part-time stuff, and he's out helping us prep stuff and clean stuff, and because the scrap yards don't want hoses and lines on it, so he's out there and he's cutting them off and taking them off and getting it. So once it's in a prepared area, it's ready to go off. And yeah, so I've got 16. I think it's 16 full-time. I'll say 3 part-time, 2 or 3.
Do you have metrics on the progress you're making on removing? I mean,
I know how much I've removed,
You do?
pretty much.
Is that by tonnage or by
Mhm.
piece?
Yeah. Yeah. So about 1 million pounds worth.
In what period of time?
Trying to think, I just sent it to Lorraine. So probably 2 months.
What'd you start with?
Well, I mean, what do we start? I don't know. Yeah, I just know we have been since, because cost effective, it's like when scrap's at nothing, it's gonna cost you money to get rid of it. Well, now it's up, even if it's even, it's still leaving. But it's up high, so it might as well.
I'm just interested in a demonstration project.
No,
Yeah.
you can obviously see it, but going out there and looking at it, there's no question. It's going.
Give me another month and knock on wood, let's hope there's nothing up in the woods. Because where we had all the scrap, we started moving, there's probably, let's say, 30 machines up there. And in the last week, we pulled down probably 8 or 10 of them, of the smaller ones. And that leaves, let's say another 20, that where we took all the scrap from, which is approximately 3/4 of an acre, we will take it from there and just get it out of there. So then there won't be anything up on the hill. There'll still be some stuff behind where the fence line was, but up farther to be the south. I'm hoping to have it all cleaned up, all that out of there in a month-ish. And all the tires are under roof, every one of them that's loose. And that was our last violation from IDEM, is we actually had them, which you can't even stack them. We had them standing up because we cleaned it, we got rid of a bunch of them. And then we wanted to stack them to make room. So we literally stood them up tire by tire. And these are big tires, not just car tires. So when we stacked them up in rows, and half IDEM says we were good, but the lady who did the report, she didn't like it. So she wrote us a violation on it of stacking. And I'm not talking stacking up top, I'm talking standing them straight up and putting them in rows like that. So, but it's a moot point now. They're all inside.
What are you gonna do with those tires?
We sell a lot of them.
Do you really?
Yeah. I mean, if they're, yeah. I mean, we sell, I mean, if they're bad, we've actually got a machine now that we shear them. So instead of like we'll have to pay, like we've paid, there's a place in Noblesville, which they're IDEM certified, and we gave IDEM all of our documents. Here's where the guy took the tires. He took 40,000 pounds worth of tires and all that. So he take those. Well, now that we got this machine, we're actually doing work for him to cut tires up. Because if you quarter tires, no matter how big they are, they got to take them at the landfills. So I was told by the guy that is certified by them. So we sell them and get rid of the bad ones. But yeah, there's a lot of good ones you sell. We'll send tires to California. I mean, yeah. I mean, tires can be thousands of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
So you're basically, the engineering firm just wanting to come back in a couple meetings and fill us in on what's.
Probably the next meeting.
Well, yeah, as of right now, your extension was for 60 days, so we will be coming back to the next meeting.
Next meeting, okay.
And answering questions and documenting our submittal, hopefully a submittal.
Sure.
And show compliance with your extension.
Mr. Drew, you have your contractor in mind at that time that you're gonna hire? Based off his drawings, if his drawings will be completed within that?
I can give you a list of.
That's what we talked about earlier. No, I mean,
I'm talking about time he's done, when you guys come back.
He just wants a list of who you would consider.
I don't have a list right now.
No, he wants me to prepare a list
Oh,
for
that's
you
fine.
to present to them.
Next meeting.
Oh, next meeting? Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's more.
Brad
for you,
is
not me.
correct. It floods out there continually. And it's a MacArthur Court. What's the other road to the west there, Brad? You remember? MacArthur Court, and what's the other road?
Flintwood.
Which one?
Flintwood. So MacArthur
It
Court.
floods down Flintwood also. Because I had several calls with a lady there that's washing out the side of her hill. So it's just not Drew's property that's causing us flooding down there.
So that
It's
the
that
call
whole
from
area.
washing out the hill is from Drew's property.
No, it wasn't from
So if
him.
you say coming from off that side,
No, it's
There's
coming
only
down
one-
the side of the road. Her house sits up on the hill, it's coming down the side of the road.
And that, where her house sits it butts up against Drew's Park.
But there was no water coming, it's coming down the road. That's what I'm trying to tell you. The water's coming down the road.
There's only one hill.
Tired for 3 days.
There's only one hill right there, and that comes from
I
the hill.
understand.
For some reason.
Weather.
Any other questions you have for
You
me?
know,
or-
the only thing I'd say, Jason, I've been pretty impressed with everything you've had to say today, so, thank you for that, and thank you for hiring Mr. Miller, because I think you'll get it done.
We thought the last guy.
And so if you do everything he tells you to do, I think you'll be all right. That's my impression at the moment, don't prove me wrong.
I will do everything I can to not.
Back where we started, when we first started talking about this, if these guys do it all, I agree. If they don't, then somebody's gonna be doing it, so now who's paying for it?
Yeah.
We're back to,
Ultimately,
you know,
it would be the landowner. I mean, you would, potentially, I'm not an attorney, you have to talk
Right.
to your attorney, but you can do the work and assess him as the landowner because it's a violation. But ultimately, the goal is to get the property cleaned
It would
up.
still be a lot cheaper for the county if he's taken care of.
It would be cheaper for him as well.
Him as well.
So, Mr. Drew, I do also want to let you know that I am not against you, okay?
I don't believe you.
But
Just saying.
it's okay, but
Don't say that.
But as a resident right there, I'm really pissed off. So I'm just being honest, right? But once before, and I told this commission that I don't want to see a business get shut down. And I told you that personally when I talked to you when we was outside.
When you guys called
Of course, because it was,
no, you called the papers and all that to come down there
the
and,
papers just came because it.
no, they
called.
didn't.
But I also let you know then too, that I didn't want to shut you down.
You did say that.
But at the same time, I don't want my property to be destroyed, as well as me losing money for my property value because of your property. Because I'm gonna protect my own self-interest as well.
Just know that I'm involved.
Yeah.
I will do what's required by the county, by the city, by IDEM, and by all regulations, and give him a plan that he can produce to contractors to make it go away. You know, I'm simply acting as a mediator here.
And
I think-
without a doubt, going this route's gonna be the fastest way to get the water stopped.
Mhm.
Because we stop this and then start another process, and we're gonna be pushing it on back again.
Right.
So I'm hoping this all works out.
And so, and I understand, and I hope wholeheartedly that, you know, you're an engineer. I'm a project manager, so I know, I deal
Sure.
with engineers all day, right?
Sure.
So I understand that, you know, it's all about, after you do your part, implementation is on you.
Absolutely.
And I'll still be involved. I'll still be observing what he's doing for compliance with my plan. And if it's not, then, you know, I can't make you do it. I can issue a letter that says you're not doing it. If you're not gonna listen to me, then, you know, I'm gonna wash my hands of it and turn it back over to the board. And, you know, I don't believe that he's gonna do that.
All right.
But that's within my responsibility, because again, he may be paying my bill, but I'm working for all the landowners, yourself, the board, him, the county, the state.
Because your design will be held accountable.
That's correct. And if he doesn't follow what my plan is, then I'm gonna say, you're not doing what I told you to do to become in compliance, therefore you're not in compliance.
Right.
That still remains on him.
Thank you.
Okay. So Brad, in addition to this, update next meeting, would you have someone from the department, to assess and somehow quantify the progress being made on bringing the property into zoning compliance based on your, previously approved?
Yeah, that was actually something that Kelly and I talked about. He's told me how many truckloads that he's taken out and the tonnage that he's taken out. I was hoping he had all that information today.
I think that we need to have,
I can email it to you.
Yeah. But we need, that was something I was hoping to be presented today, and it was not. So we certainly will make sure at the next meeting that we have that info.
You know, if you email Brad some updates as you go along, he can send them out to us.
That would be wonderful.
Because we had to send some to Lorraine and them. So I could pull it up right now and email it.
Well, that's one of the things that I just mentioned to Brad is by the end of the business day on Friday, we will submit an email to Brad that he can then forward documenting progress to date that is measurable and quantifiable. That, again, that goes to show our good faith for its compliance. I wasn't aware of that, or I would have brought it.
Yep, no, that'd be perfect.
That'd be helpful.
So-
Another thing is, I called Brad because I wanted him to see the progress out there, and he's went into the museum. He's physically seen what's there and what's going on and what's moving into there. So. Yeah, right. Wasn't the only one.
Is there anything else? I think, yep.
Is Friday acceptable to the board?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, I'll make sure that that happens.
All right, thank you.
Is there anything else that I can either answer questions or provide clarification on from my perspective?
I think today we're pretty well caught up. Nope.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all. As a speaker, yeah.
Both of them, please.
No, Brad, you got this solar ordinance, but
As soon as he's done writing, I'll say a couple words.
Are you sure it's a couple words?
did you see this? Gave you one of those. Maybe something we might want to discuss the next meeting.
As you're aware, I sent out the draft solar ordinance yesterday. I didn't expect much, if any, discussion today on it because it's a rather large document and there's a lot of information there. But I'm certainly hoping to get feedback from the board that on whether or not this is what you were looking for, if you want something else modified or what have you, before we actually have a public hearing on this. I have ensured that all of the items that the BZA set forth conditionally onto Lone Solar is in this ordinance. So 100% of what was stated in those conditions is in this. And I will also add that there was a lot of discussion with regard to prime farmland. There is a section in here with regard to that. Please take a good look at that and offer any suggestions that you have on that particular portion. I've also put in a section for, so I don't mess up the terminology, I'll look it up here real quick. For a residential property value agreement, there is a sample in here at the end of the document. Again, please take a good look at that and see if that is something we want to consider or not. Okay.
I got one question. For existing petitions that's been filed, this only affects moving forward, it doesn't go back into the...
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Correct.
Anything else?
You don't have any.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same? Meeting adjourned.
Thanks.
No kid.
It's one of those you have to read 3 times and then look at your notes.
I'll bet on next time. Thanks. Oh, Chris and Adam might be meeting at 10:30. We got one of those tractors for rent, big ones, transmission.
I saw it was parked out there all by itself.
Yeah, well, we thought we had it fixed, but